pharmacological implications. Dr. Upendra Rao did his B Pharmacy from Osmania University, Hyderabad, and M Pharmacy in Pharmacology from JNTU, Hyderabad, and PhD in Biological Sciences from Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research, Bhopal. Now he is pursuing his postdoctoral fellowship in Department of Pediatrics, Penn State College of Medicine, USA, on the topic of regulation of chromatin architecture in hematopoiesis and leukemia. Dr. Upendra Rao served as peer reviewer for more than 40 manuscripts from 25 international journals of repute, including from Springer Nature journals. And he received a conference waiver for Young Scientist Grant from International Conference on Yeast Genetics and Molecular Biology, Italy, and Senior Research Fellow from MHRD and International Travel Support Grant from SERB, DST, DBT, and CICS. Dr. Upendra Rao has many international and national publications with more citations and high H indexes and I-10 indexes. With this brief introduction, I would like to start the scientific session without any delay. And now I am welcoming our today's speaker, Dr. Upendra Rao. Please welcome, sir.
Thank you, Sharada, for your nice kind introduction. Right now I'm sharing my screen. So, topic of my presentation today is engineering of 3D genome, an update on emerging technologies and their pharmacological implications. So, this is a kind of work which I am pursuing in my postdoctoral fellowship, and I want to update the new young budding pharmacists about this technology. How can they can be used as this one as a future for their career. So when it comes to the genetic engineering, is a good platform for building a career for your new pharmacists. So whenever we see the term like engineer, we see the general typical engineer looks like a civil engineer or like a other engineer. So instead of that, I will be going to introduce a new terminology like genome engineering. So this uses the genetic code. So when we see the complexity of human body that we know are the body looks like one entity, but when you see inside, like it is a system, organs are systematically connected very well. And when you see in the organs, like it is a buildup of different tissues. And then tissues, when you see in detail, like if you go inside, it is a buildup from the cells. And these cells have a unique structure, like they have their own DNA and their individual cellular contents as well as different chemical constituents that will give the signaling to the cells. So today we will be focusing more inside of the cell, like that is the nucleus, which consists of our genetic code. So that we all know that the central dogma of life, that is like biology, is based on the genetic code, that is DNA, which is getting replicated in the cells when the cells get replicate. And also when the DNA is giving the genetic code for the formation of messenger RNA through transcription process. And this messenger RNA is getting translated into protein, that is, which is coded by the basic DNA. So when you talk about one term, like one gene, it comes as a transcript, that is messenger RNA. When you talk about protein, that is one protein. And if you talk about several proteins, the whole proteins, it is like a genome, like it talks about the whole content. And it comes as a transcriptome for the mRNAs, and it comes to the proteome for the study of proteins in a global. And the technique which we use to study the genome or transcriptome or proteome in whole, like in the cell, that we call as genomics or transcriptomics or proteomics respectively. And if you come to the nucleus, how the nucleus, the genome, DNA is get organized. So chromatin is a functional organization of the genome. So as you can see the nucleus, we see the DNA is organized very compacted in the form of chromatin. And if you see more and more elaborated, so this double-stranded DNA, which is forming into the nucleosome, which is a basic core unit of the chromatin, and which is get more and more compacted in tight so that it can form a 30 nanometer chromatin fiber, which is further condensed into the chromatin as a form of chromatin in the nucleus. So if you see the human genome, like it is a very hard to study genome, but it was completely sequenced in 2003. And as we all know, our human genome has 23 chromosome pairs, which has over almost 3 billion base pairs of the coding basis. And if you see about the whole genome, like among the whole genome, only 2% of the genome is only functional and forms of protein, like what we need. But the remaining 98% of the genome is non-coding. We can say it's a junk DNA, people say used to previously, but and later on it was identified that several classes of non-coding DNA, like such as RNAs like tRNAs, rRNAs, and pseudogenes and introns, untranslated regions like UTRs, mRNA regulatory sequences, and these are all forms of coding, like supports and changes the coding DNA in several ways. So that we are talking more in detail, like this was not studied in our textbooks. So as we can see, like a eukaryotic gene structure, like when you talk about the DNA, it's a double-stranded DNA sequence. And among that, as I can say, coding and non-coding part. So only we are talking about messenger RNA, which is only study about open reading frame, like ORF, we say. And the other sequences, like as I can say, regulatory sequences, such as enhancer and promoter and 5' UTRs, like untranslated regions, and also silencers. So as we all know, a promoter is a sequence of DNA which proteins bind that initiate the transcription at the ORF starting. And as you can see, enhancers, these are the short, like 50 to 1,500 base pair long region DNA, which can be bound by proteins, like which such as activators or repressors to increase the transcription of a particular gene. And if you see, as you can show graphically represented here, the enhancers which regulate the transcription of the genes are away from their gene body, like such as it may be like several kb apart, and like these enhancers regulate the transcription of these genes through looping of the DNA. So, and when it comes to the looping part, it has insulators play a very important role. So these insulators are like 300 to 2000 base pair in length, and which are like contain the clustered binding sites for sequence specific DNA proteins, such as CTCF that I show in like more in the next slides. That is a CCTCF binding factor, which mediate intra and intra chromosomal looping interactions. So that, as I said, looping is very important in the genome organization in the chromatin. So that long range chromatin interactions play a very important role in gene regulation, especially if you can see like promoter and enhancer are like several kb apart. Like as I say, it's a very long distance, but these enhancers regulate the transcription of these genes from the very long regions. And this is only possible through looping of the DNA, and these enhancer and promoter get together, joined together by proteins like such as insulators or dimerizing proteins. So in addition to the CTCF, there is one of the protein that I am going to talk is LDB1. This is a limb domain binding protein, which has a self-association domain that these two proteins, when comes together, they form homodimer. Like these two proteins bind each other so that it can bring those chromatin, like a DNA from long range region together, so that the enhancer can regulate the transcription of this gene. So, and this LDB1, like previously it was supposed to work alone, like it is a homodimer, but the recent papers, like studies showed that this LDB1 can interact with an insulator protein, that CTCF that I told previously. So these two proteins can function together to bring these enhancers, like long range enhancer and promoter interactions, so that the transcription of the gene can be modulated. And in addition to this LDB1 CTCF, only LDB1 itself, like as I said, this protein can make a homodimer. So this LDB1 dimer can regulate the chromatin loops and bring the long range enhancer promoter together and make the gene expression changes. So as I said, like this folding of the chromatin loops, like into the chromatin plays very important role, that is in the three-dimensional space, like in the nucleus. So this folding is very important, and very recent literature shows this folding is also misfolded in case of disease conditions. So this is a one graphical representation how looping, like in the healthy cell, is get changed to different looping pattern in the disease cell. So sometimes the protein binding is get affected due to mutations or something. So the CTCF binding is affected, so that the occupancy of the CTCF is changed at that location, and the looping is completely disrupted in the diseased cell. And also these kind of changes in the misfolding in the chromatin is also can lead to chromosomal translocations. And as we can see, these healthy cells, they have intact genes together and this loop together in the nucleus. But when come to the cancer cell, because of this closeness, this it leads to the interchromosomal interaction and exchange of the genes, like lead to the fusion genes. So these changes in this looping pattern will also lead to change in the topologically associated domains. So when you talk in detail, like the looping and the long range, like a big scale, so these kind of small looping can form a compartment. So that we call it as a TAD, like topologically associated domain. So if you can say this topological associated domains in a space like 1 and 2, like A and B in wild type is something organized like this. But when come to the alteration of CTCF binding at this site, can completely alter the looping pattern, and it can merge and form a single chromatin loop. And sometimes the binding of the CTCF site can get mutations and get a inversion of the CTCF binding site, and completely the enhancer and promoter looping is completely changed to different transcription associated domain TAD. Previously it was active in the TAD B, but it can be active in the TAD A and make a gene A is active and gene B is get silenced. So this kind of misfolding in the chromatin loops can lead to the human diseases. So one of such examples, like today I will be talking, is limb malformations that are caused by alterations in chromatin structure at the EPH4 locus. So this is also very recent observation that 3D genome, previously only genetic mutations in the DNA code is is the reason for the diseases. But later on, not only the gene sequence, but the structure of the chromatin and their looping is also very important for the healthy cells. So here, like this is the organization of the EPHA4, which is a gene which is regulates the limb formation process. So this organization at this locus, like you can see, like it has a one super enhancer which is regulating EPHA4 in the TAD1, like a topological associated domain 1 in the normal cells, whereas TAD3 and TAD2 are completely inactive and those genes are completely silenced. But when it comes to the limb malformation defects such as brachydactyly and F syndrome and polydactyly, so this lead to the deletion of this EPHA4 region and can the super enhancer loop to the PAX3 gene. So this will lead to the malformation of limb formation. And sometimes F syndrome also the patients has shown the inversion of DNA sequence, so that the enhancer completely inverted and then changed their direction, and it is regulating now Wnt6 gene, which is very far. Now this EPHA4 is completely out of the picture. And in case of polydactyly, there is a genome duplication event, and which is also duplicating completely EPHA4 gene as well as the super enhancer, and which is increasing the output of this gene will lead to the higher amounts of EPHA4, which is not required by the cells. In another case of example where gene duplication that is also leading to the formation of de novo TAD, like associated domain in the colorectal cancer cell. So this is one of the example where IGF2, which is a very important factor that we can use as a marker for colorectal cancer. So the overexpression is very reported in colorectal cancer, and we can use it as a biomarker kind of stuff. So in colorectal cancer, like it was observed that there was a gene duplication event, and it has a super enhancer which is mimicked just before the IGF-2, and it is forming a loop to regulate the IGF-2 expression. And this is itself is forming another topological associative domain which is not present in the normal cells. So this kind of events, genome duplication or changing chromatin foldings, can lead to the abrupt change in the gene expression pattern, and also leading to the disease conditions, especially the colorectal cancer. So these kind of events and these kind of examples are exist in several diseases. So we, as a pharmacologist and as well as a pharmacist and as a microbiologist, we are aiming to correct these misfoldings as well as correct the gene sequences. So as you all know, it's from the textbooks that genetic diseases are also very important to talk. That is, these are mainly caused by abnormality in the genetic makeup, that is the DNA sequence of an individual. So these abnormality can be from like single base changes to a large DNA deletion. So this can be like a single gene affection or maybe a gross chromosomal abnormality. So that can lead to the subtraction of entire chromosome or set of chromosomes from the cell. And some people also inherit genetic disorders from the parents because the code change, whatever the mutations happen in the parents, automatically pass to the next generations, like their daughter or daughter generations. So these acquired changes are also can be like mutations are pre-existing as from the parent, they pass to the daughter, like the next level generation, or sometimes these mutations are acquired due to exposure to different environmental pollutants or some drugs, or some randomly also can happen because our cellular machinery can do some mistakes sometimes. So if you can see, there is a lot range of genetic disorders are exhibited. So this can be like, as I said, like there are different kind of genetic disorders. Like if there is a change in the single gene, which is inheritance, like can lead to different diseases such as cystic fibrosis, sickle cell anemia, which is very severe disease, and also Huntington disease and hemochromatosis. And come to the multifactorial inheritance, like these kind of disorders are having a multifactorial things. So these ones can be affected by multiple genes and also can be affected and supported with other environmental pollutants or factors. So these can be like heart diseases and Alzheimer's and PB and arthritis, diabetes, cancers, especially, and obesity. So these have like there is no single cause we can point out, but there are multifactorial things. And it comes to the chromosome abnormalities, so that including the chromosomal interchromosomal deletions or interchromosomal substitutions or deletions can lead to the Turner syndrome and other Cri-du-Chat syndrome. and the other one is the mitochondrial inheritance. So this mitochondrial genome is also very important, and the mutations in mitochondrial genome also can lead to some of the point out diseases here, like Leber's hereditary optic atrophy and myoclonic epilepsy and red fibers, and also mitochondrial encephalopathy and like dementia kind of disorders. So here it comes to the main part, like genome editing. So as I talked about in the introduction, like our genome, in come to the sequence, like the code is very important, as well as, and the folding of the chromatin, like the chromatin fibers in the nucleosome is very important. So that's why when there is a change in the genetic code, we can correct it like through editing approach. We can engineer the genome so that we can revert back to the phenotype, or we can change the gene of our interest so that the disease phenotype can be reduced. So the term genome editing itself is like altering the sequence of DNA in situ, like in its original position. So targeted mutagenesis, like as I said, if you need to change the sequence, it should be very targeted. Like you can't change the DNA everywhere. Like it should be very specific and very targeted. So we need very targeted approaches so that we can knock out or we can change the point mutations, or we can insert the DNA, or we can trade the landing pairs according to our interest. Ideally, we should leaving no transgene out footprint. That means like the genome editing doesn't look like we edited the genome. Like the cell doesn't feel like a transgene. Like it should be like feel like its own DNA even after editing. And for that thing, like we have a targeted nucleases for genome editing approach. So these are developed through last few decades. Like one of the technologies like meganucleases. These are the restriction endonucleases which can cut the DNA, and these are developed in around 1990s. And later on, zinc finger nucleases, that is ZFNs. So these are developed in around mid 2000s. And later on, it was improved further, and then they modified and they brought up to the talents like transcription activator, like effector nucleases. These are developed very like around a decade ago, like 2010s. And the another one is most important and the revolutionary technique, that is CRISPR, like clustered regularly spaced short palindromics repeats. So this was discovered in 2013. So I will be talking about talents, which is discovered in 2010s. And this is also very important. And this one and the zinc finger nucleases, both of them have a similar strategy of designing and editing the genome. So the term itself is a transcription activator like effector nucleases. So this is a, in the talents, like we use a non-specific FOC1 nuclease domain, which can cut the DNA strands. And this is very like it's a non-specific, as I said, it's a nuclease. It can cut the DNA wherever it goes. So we should target these nucleases very specifically to the genome. So for that purpose, we fuse this domain with DNA binding domain, so which is customizable in nature and derived from tails like a transcription activator, like effectors, like kind of proteins. So if you see the structure of the tails, like they have a N-terminal part and then C-terminal, and there is the activation domain, and they have a nuclear localization sequence which can take this protein into the nucleus. And they have a central repeat domain, so which can be engineered as per our interest. As I said, like if the DNA target of sequence is something like this, so we can change the central repeat domain according to the genetic code. So if the genetic code is something like this, so we have to have the sequence something like these amino acids, this H and D can code for can bind to the C like cytosine, and this NI code can detect the alanine, and N and G can code for and identify and bind to the this one T, and then N and K can bind to the G guanosine. So the prerequisite of the T nucleotide preceding the DNA target sequence, like it should have a T. This is a code. This is a rule for talents to work. So when this has a sequence and it has engineered something like this, so when you have it in the cells, it go and bind very specifically to the sequence of our interest, so that the nucleus can go and sit in the DNA according to our as per our interest. So these engineered tails, as I said, the non-specific FOC1 nucleus is attached to the tail so that it can form a talons. So these customizable talons for the targeted genome, mutagenesis and editing. So for editing, like we use two talons for the two specific regions. So these tails have binding for the sequence A and sequence B, and this FOC1 nucleus can only cut the DNA when it get dimerized. So we need two tails together, like around the 6 to 10 base pair space in between these two sequences. So when it come together, like it can cut the DNA, and then later on our DNA repair machinery can come and it can do point mutation, or sometimes it can do insertion of the DNA, or sometimes it can do the deletion of the DNA, and sometimes complete chromosomal deletion if you need a longer DNA stretch of to be cut. So in addition to that one, there is a new method which is RNA-based genome engineering platform, that is CRISPR. So this is a clustered regulatory interspaced short palindromic repeats. So this was acquired adaptive immunity in bacteria against viruses, and then it was discovered as a genome editing technology in 2013. and first described in 1987 this Cas protein, which has a ability to recognize the double-stranded DNA. And this CRISPR, like as I said, is a bacterial DNA, and it has a structure like Cas9 protein, which is a nuclease, and it has a tag RNA and then different repeats and spacers so that it can recognize and DNA of our interest. Like this was the first observed in Streptococcus pyogenes. So when it comes to the methodology, like as I said, like CRISPR-Cas9, it has two components. One is guide RNA, so which is like around 70 to 24 base pairs long, and another one is Cas9 protein, which is a nuclease. So this guide RNA, which is guiding the Cas9 to go specifically into the specific region based on the sequence, and then cut that gene, and then it can do its repair as well as gene therapy in the humans as well as mice and cells. So this targeted genome editing is very in advanced stage now, and it is also entered into the clinical trials in several countries. So this is a short video which is on the CRISPR-Cas9 for a good idea about how it works in the cells. So this CRISPR, like as a cluster regulatory interspace short palintomic repeats. So this one contains the Cas9 and the guide RNA. These are two major components. So once this guide RNA comes inside into the cell, it will look for the sequence which is of interest. So we know what region we are targeting, so we can design the guide as per our interest. So this guide RNA can specifically look for its complementary DNA sequence in the genome, and then it can go and form a complex with your Cas9 in the cells. And when you transfuse this one into the cells, it will go and unwind the DNA, and then this guide RNA can go and bind specifically and then cut the DNA with Cas9. And then our repair machinery will come and then do the editing and then joining, and then DNA ligase can come and then bring to the normal position. So this kind of editing is very important, and when we have point mutations in the genome or editing in the sequences can be used for this critical advances in the CRISPR-Cas9 technology. So as I said, the applications of CRISPR technology. So before it was discovered, like researchers were limited only for the talents and like zinc finger nucleases, which are time consuming as well as cost expensive. And but CRISPR after 2013, like it has opened up a field of genetic modifications with its inexpensive and universal applicability to any organism, and a synthetic RNA can be just created with any stretch of DNA. So this has a very advantages over other techniques for genome editing, and this also has been implicated very well in the plants for enhancing the crop production, and also in different microorganisms like for fighting the antimicrobial drug resistances, and also treating genetic diseases. So in addition to the Cas9 protein, which I talked about previously, so there is a variant of dCas9, which is a dead Cas9. You can say it's a defective Cas9, which cannot cut the DNA. So this is a mutation in this nickase domain. So people intentionally made the Cas9 ineffective so that it does not cut the DNA, but it can go and bind to the DNA of region of interest. So generally this dCas9 itself, when you target with the guide RNA to some region of interest with near to the target gene, it can silence the gene, like it will interfere with the transcription process. So it can bring some silencing. But people have tried fusing this one dCas9 with other proteins, which are like repressor proteins, like a CRAB. So this CRAB domain is a transcriptional repression module. So this is zinc finger proteins like previously. So when it has fused with dCas9, if you use the guide RNA, which is specific to our gene of interest, the recruitment of dCas9 fused with repressor can repress the gene more effectively than the only dCas9. And also there is another version, like people also tried activation of the genes instead of repression. So they used VP64, like a viral protein 64, which is almost consisting of 4 proteins of VP16 peptide. So this VP64 is constitutively a transcriptional activator. So when it is very close to the transcription start site, DCAS9 fused with VP64 can bring the transcriptional upregulation. So wherever the genes which have very less output, when we need the more and robust activation of the genes, we can use the DCAS9 fused with transcriptional activators for the upregulation. And also the functionality of this VP64 is not very effective in all the genomic regions. So to bring the confirm and more active upgradation of the upregulation of the genes, people have fused this VP64 with 2 other transcriptional activators like P65 and RTA. These are also transcriptional activators and epigenetic modifiers. So these can bring more and more activation than comparing only using one activator. So these variants of DCAS9 also play a very important role in regulating the gene expression, especially modulate the disease conditions. And in addition to the DCAS9 and Cas9 versions, so that is only talking about the change in the DNA sequence. But the Cas9 method has also increased and also expanded to changing the folding of the chromatin as well. So these are the some recent literature papers that are showing the how we can artificially forcefully loop the chromatins. So the first example, like here the Boyke group has showed that zinc fingers, like I said, zinc finger proteins, like for the targeting the DNA sequence. So those zinc finger proteins targeted with tagged with LDB1, like as I said, like a LM1 domain binding protein, which can dimerize itself. So in case of sickle cell anemia and some other hematological disorders, there is a lack of expression of beta globin hemoglobin gene. So here in this paper, like the authors have tried to reactivate the silenced beta globin gene so that the disease conditions can be recovered as it can be applied as a therapeutic approach. So this is the representation of the thing, like where we have the normal adult has a locus control region with only adult globin gene, but the fetal globin is completely silenced. So they target zinc finger tagged with LDB1 protein to the fetal globin gene, and so that it can form a loop with forcefully to the active locus, and it has a increased transcriptional expression of this beta globin, which can be used as a therapeutic approach in the disease patients. In addition to the zinc finger one, so very recently, like in 2017, there is a group which also used DCAS9 fused with heterodimeric protein like PYL1 and ABI1, which are plant proteins from the abscisic acid signaling. So these 2 proteins fused with 2 DCAS9s, and they targeted 2 different regions of the the genome so that it can form a loop by making a heterodimer when they induce with abscisic acid. So this kind of induction method also can lead to heterodimerization of these proteins in the human genome and bring the long range chromatin interactions and can loop together and to bring the genomic changes in the gene expression as well as protein output. And in addition to that one, there is another method which is very recently, like in July 2019, there is another group. They showed another version of DCAS9, which is light activated dynamic looping. So they have a 2 proteins like CIBN proteins, which are targeted to DCAS9, fused with DCAS9, and they targeted to 2 different regions in the genome. And when they use the blue light, so this CIBN get a formation of a homodimer and lead to these 2 regions together, and so that the loop is formed by using CRY2 as well as CIBN interaction here. So this was also demonstrated in another genomic locus like ZFP462 and KLF4 in the Arabidopsis thaliana plant model organism. So when they use blue light, so the weaker protein like ZFP462 gene got highly induced when they got induced with blue light, this promoter got close in contact with a distal enhancer, which is regulating KLF4 gene. So this kind of approach are very important, as well as changing the method very effectively, the chromatin changes. So when you compare these genome editing tools, there are, as I said, like zinc finger nucleases are very old and more cost and more time consuming process. With time, they have developed to CRISPR-Cas9, which is easy to do and as well as very inexpensive to do. And when you compare these methodologies over the time and the number of clinical trials registered with these techniques, so as per the very recent entry in the database, so these are the methods, like as you can see, Cas9 has a wider impact, and the TALENS technology is completely out, and people have transferred to zinc finger nucleus in 2018. But later on, they realized TALENS and Cas9s are more effective in doing the genome editing. So there are more clinical trials have been registered in 2019, and the data from 2020 has to be come, and expecting only Cas9 take the lead role in genome editing thing. So as I said, genome editing, like only somatic cells which are cannot transfer this mutation or editing to the next generations. So can be very therapeutic purpose, like in the clinical trials as well. So this can be done both ex vivo or in vivo. So in case of ex vivo, we use cell culture or some cells isolated from patients, and we edit them in the lab and then transfer back to the patient, so that the cells can change back to the normal phenotype, and also to reduce the disease symptoms in the human beings. And when it comes to the in vivo genome editing, there is a viral delivery and as well as nanoparticle delivery thing coming to the delivery of this Cas9, like genome editing platforms into the human cells, so that the editing can happen in vivo. So some of the recent updates from the CRISPR thing. So genome editing method like tackles HIV in first clinical test. This is one of the positive news that we got in 2014. Like this is a very small clinical trial on very smaller number of patients. But later on, this was not approved for embryonic editing. And there is a, as you all know, maybe CRISPR baby scandal from China. There is a scientist who did editing in the embryo, and that got lead to the born of two babies in the China, which is a very done with unethical manner and which is not taken any approval from the regulatory authorities. So this kind of malpracticing in the CRISPR method is very harmful for the human society. So we should have a very strong regulatory approvals for using this CRISPR for human applications. And there is another Russian scientist. He is also claiming a CRISPR baby, like he is editing the human embryos for the altering the deaf gene, so that it can bring back to the normal phenotype in those embryos. And this scientist, like Denis Rebrikov, told that he is waiting for the approval, like from the regulatory authorities, to do this experiment in the clinical trial. So this CRISPR technology is, like, as I said, like it is having more and more impact in these days, and several clinical trials have been started, like from smaller to the larger number of patients, and expecting like CRISPR very important role in the next future generations. And there is another recent study, which is February 2020. So they use CRISPR engineered T cells in patients with refractory cancer. So the study has shown that the cells, normal T cells isolated from patient, and they use the CRISPR-Cas9 to the T cells to express the antigens, which are specifically recognize the cancer cells in the human. And these cells again transfer back to the patient, and they have showed very good prognosis and very prominent results in the trial. So the first human clinical trial was very successful according to this data, and also the cells are very safe and durable for cancer therapy in this study. So hopefully we see next future studies with this CRISPR technology for the disease alterations as well as changing the human genome. And there is another phase 2 trial of gene editing therapy for sickle cell disease also cleared by FDA very recently. So this is also very great news for us to be a genome engineer. And also to be noted, there is another method which is coming up alternative to the Cas9, CRISPR-Cas9, that is precise prime Cas9. Like this is more and more specific than the Cas9, and they showed it can edit genome without making a DNA double strand breaks of the donor DNA. So hopefully these methods also can take the lead instead of Cas9 and can bring the whatever the change what we need. So thank you all for your kind patience listening, as well as giving this opportunity to be a speaker in this international webinar. And I also want to thank the convener as well as the in charge of the vice chancellor of this seminar, like Sri Rahul Bojja IAS Garu, and also the registrar Professor Pawan Kumarji, and also OSD2VC like Dr. Madhusudan Garu, and also the principal of the University College Pharmaceutical Sciences, Dr. Prabhakar Reddy Garu. Thank you all. For the audience, for your kind questions. Yeah, if you have any questions, please let me know.
Sharda.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Upender sir, for giving a great presentation. Now it's time for a question and answer session. There are some questions from participants, sir.
Yeah.
Shall I ask? Upender sir?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
The first question.
So Upender sir, stop screen sharing.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. The first question, in 3D genome misfolding in human cell to disease cell, is there any disruption of CTCF, or can it be due to the other factors also?
Yeah, sometimes like mutations in the CTCF binding motif, like as I said, CTCF is a big protein and it leads a motif structure. So if there is a small changes in the genetic code, can also lead changes to the CTCF binding at that site, and it can take the lead from other CTCFs, and automatically it can change the topological associated domain with the disease conditions. So mostly it is associated with the expression of the CTCF as well as the binding affinity of the CTCF at that site. Yeah.
Okay, Sharda, next. Sharda, next. Hello?
Hello. Voice
next
sir.
Next question is audible.
Okay. Sir, next question, sir.
Yeah.
Is there any limitations on this CRISPR technology?
Yeah, there is a, like, as you can see, there the specificity of the Cas9 in the genome. Like when you do target the Cas9 in the genome, it has a only 17 to 24 bases of the DNA to be recognized. So it can have some mismatches, like it can go to the different gene or different locus of the gene. So there can be off targets which are not expected, but the frequency of off targets are very, very less. But when it comes to the human, like we cannot take the risk. So that's why people are more and more conservative about this one and trying for more efficient and more robust Cas9 variants. And also people are modifying the Cas9, Cas protein variants also from different bacterial organelles. They're also looking for more and more efficient genome editors compared to the Cas9. So there could be off targets effect compared to this one, but very smaller fraction.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you for answering all the questions with great patience.
Thank you.
Now I request the dynamic principal of UCPS, Palamuru University, Dr. Prabhakar Reddy Garu, to brief the talk of today's speaker. Over to principal, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Sharda. Upendra, really it is a highly informative session.
Thank you, sir.
But unfortunately, no, the syllabus what you are saying, no, it is out of reach of our students.
Okay.
But it is innovative. I have few questions regarding your talk.
Yeah,
We
sure.
are talking about the viral delivery. So can you explain about what is viral vectors, non-viral vectors?
So generally we use lentiviral or retroviral vectors, which are replication defective vectors. So they cannot propagate themselves. So until unless they go with the cells. So these vectors generally when you transduce into the cells, so they can go into the cells and integrate into the genome very randomly, so that we can achieve the stable expression every time. So these are very risk-free vectors, I can say, and more effective way of delivering the DNA into the genome, into the nucleus. And come to the other, yeah.
Please continue.
So other than the viral vectors, like as I said, like people are using these days nanoparticle system for the delivery of these recombinant genomic products into the human gene, but it was not so effective and efficient as genome editing approaches like with the viral technologies.
What about gold nanoparticles? Are they good?
So I'm not sure, like these nanoparticle approaches are like very few researchers are coming up these days for the delivery. So I'm not much updated about the gold particle system. Mostly I'm working with viral vectors actually these days.
Okay, is viral are safe to humans?
What, sir?
Viral vectors are safety. What about safety? Are they?
So those are actually replication defective, sir. So they are very safe to use. So they don't replicate themselves. So it's good to use actually.
So can you explain about what is dCas9?
So that is actually, sir, defective Cas9. Like D indicates the defective or dead Cas9. So it is actually dead. Like it doesn't have a nickase activity, like as you can say, nuclease activity. Like it cannot cut the DNA, but only it can recognize the double strand DNA and can go and bind at the site of our interest. So that will not cut the DNA.
Oh.
Only it will go and sit on the DNA. That's it.
Okay. What is TAD and A and B? TAD, TAD A and B.
What is that, sir?
TAD.
TAD. Okay. TAD are actually, sir, as I said, like TAD indicates the topologically associated domain. So as I said, the chromatin is getting folded in the space and as well as the time. So that interaction of the chromatin and some forms a specific domain in the folding, like in the nucleus compartments, as you can say, different compartments like active compartment and inactive compartment. They have different TADs, like they have topological associated domain. So the gene which is active, they will be into one TAD, and the silenced genes can go into another TAD. So this organization is very important in the cells, but it can be disrupted in disease conditions and can lead to the changes in the gene expression with time. So that can lead to the disease phenotypes.
Great. Thank you, sir. Really, yeah, wonderful session. Even we learned many things.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Right from your central digma of life, like DNA, RNA, proteins, long-range chromatin interactions, gene regulations, LDB to CTCF complex, mRNA, 3D genome, misfolding in human diseases like wild type, deletion, inversion, gene duplication. So is it easy for doing gene duplication, sir?
So gene duplication is like a little bit, because if you want to, like we can do with doing the donor DNA, like is it possible to do a duplication as well, like in the cells, giving the donor DNA like as a template DNA? We can design the DNA, that much of DNA what we need to duplicate, and then we can cut the DNA and so that it can go to the homologous recombination, so that the DNA will be integrated into the genome to make a duplication. So is it possible?
So by doing all this, sir, how much is required? Because in our Indian universities, can we do this type of research?
Yeah, that's what actually. But previously, this was a very fancy technique in India previously. But when I come to the postdoctoral studies here, after doing these experiments in the lab, I feel like it's not that much complication to do it. You can do it easily. But only thing we need some sophisticated equipments. If we get one or two equipments that we need, we can do it very easily. It's not that much hard to do.
So what is the cost of equipment, sir, approximately? If you want to set a lab like this?
Sir, it depends on the system, like what kind of cells we need to do, like maintenance of the cells. Sometimes the cells like which doesn't require much specific media, just only the simple growth media. Sometimes if you are growing some somatic cells or some genetic cell, germ cells, they need some growth factors, and we need some cost of maintaining the cells is way more and more. So it depends on the cells. If you're using simple cancer cells that we use in the lab, like HEC 293 or like A549, like cancer cell that we maintain in the lab, it is not that much cost, sir. And also these days, a lot of companies like biotechnology companies, they are giving these recombinant cells very for less cost. I think it's not that much hard to do it.
So in your ex vivo studies, you are told about genome edition.
Genome edition?
Yeah, in ex vivo studies you mentioned, and in vivo you told about viral delivery.
Yeah. Ex vivo gene delivery. So generally, sir, we generally take the cells from patient and then we modify them in the lab. Like we will maintain like patient cells in the lab, and then we do editing part in the cells, and then we transfer these cells back to the same patient, so that the host doesn't receive the immune reactions later on. So he will feel like the cells belongs to him. So the body doesn't react, and the cells can be taken into the system very easily. So that is the very accepted approach. And as I said, like in the example, this is already entered into phase 2, and it was approved by FDA for the next studies. So these kind of studies are very safe to use it actually.
How you are going to inject, sir? Which route of administration?
What, sir?
Which route you will inject the cells to human?
So that depends, sir. Like depends on the cell type that you take. Suppose we take the T cells, that is we transplant into the bone marrow or into the system, like where it goes to the bone marrow, like mostly bone marrow implantations or bone marrow transplantations we do for the T cells.
Great. Thank you very much, Bhupender. Really wonderful session.
Thank you so much.
And we are very happy.
Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Because almost night in your place. Really, we are very sorry for disturbing you.
No, it's okay, sir. It's my pleasure to be part of this webinar, actually.
Thank you. Now, go to Sharda.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Yes. Thank you, sir. Now it's time to end the webinar 9 session. I would like to thank all the YouTube and Zoom participants for smooth coordination, and thanks to all the administrators once again, and thanks to all the technical team behind this webinar. And I thank to all my colleagues to support me in each and every moment. Thank you, Chairman cum Principal, sir. Thank you one and all. The next session will be start in few moments. Dear participants, please stay online, and the session will be continued by the Somesh. Thank you again.